Hi, I'm Pav.
And I'm Neil.
And welcome to the Top 10 of Anything podcast.
Let's start the countdown.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
There are some impossible questions to try and answer. What came first, the chicken or the egg? Why is a boxing ring square in shape? And what do you say when your partner asks, does my bum look big in this? One of the hardest questions to answer is, what is the greatest movie ever? Well, we are about to try and do just that. Here's Neil with 10 great movie facts.
Thank you very much, Pav. So in honour of our special guest for Christmas here, I thought I would tell the listeners, the top 10 of the Empire magazine's poll for the greatest movies of all time, so everybody knows, and we can see if we've got any crossovers. So at number 10, they had Goodfellas. At number 9, Raiders of the Lost Ark. At number 8, Avengers Infinity War. At number 7, Pulp Fiction. Number 6, Jaws. Number 5, The Shawshank Redemption. Number 4, The Dark Knight. Number 3, The Godfather. Number 2, Star Wars Empire Strikes Back. And number 1, Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring.
Right.
Damn it. I need to change my list.
Those dulcet tones that you can hear, there's only one person we could think of if we're going to tackle something as mad and batshit crazy as the greatest movies of all time. We had to have the Geek Queen, the legend from Empire magazine. Helen O'Hara is with us once again. Hello, Helen. It's
hello,
lovely to see
hello.
you.
Lovely to be here. Hi.
Oh my God! Right, let's unpack this first. First of all, now I've literally just changed my top 10 again. So right up before we pressed record, I changed it. What's your definition of your greatest movie in regards to what you counted for your top 10? Is it like something that you can watch over and over again? It's something that is technically brilliant, something that moves you? What would you say was your parameters for this?
I really struggled with lists as a concept. I don't think, what you some of those that you've just listed are perfect films. They are perfect, right? There's nothing wrong with them. And they are just different films. So how do you possibly rank those? I find it it's essentially part of my job. It's something I end up doing an awful lot. I've just, as we speak, as we're recording this, Sight and Sound are launching their 100 greatest films of all time, their latest update, and I contributed a list to that, which I tried to replicate here, but I've forgotten it. And this is the problem. It doesn't come naturally. So what I've chosen to do over the years is kind of stress less about it, and basically follow all those movie mentors and follow my heart. So I have to think it is great. I have to honestly believe it is a great film and feel able to stand over that word, that definition. But I also have to love it. And that is where I find myself differing from a lot of the lists. Something like The Godfather, I absolutely admire enormously. I think it is an astonishing piece of filmmaking. I cannot fault it in any respect. I personally do not love it in my heart. I admire it in my head, and therefore it is not in my top 10. So I'm just going to get that out there right now. The Godfather, not on my list.
Yeah.
But it is not a lack of respect.
Yeah,
no.
It's not in my top 10 either, just to for full disclosure. So Neil, the question I was going to ask you, and it sort of goes with what Helen said as well, is there are some movies that you feel, like The Godfather, you feel, well, if you're going to do a top 10 greatest movies, whether you like it or not, that's got to be in there, just because of its, just its standing in the lore of movies. So did you have that feeling when you did your top 10?
Well, I tried not to. I sort of went a bit like Helen. I chose what I thought was my perfect movie, what I enjoyed, what I took the time out to go and see, and did it that way. But it's an ever-evolving list, isn't it? To me, I don't think... If I was sat with my list in front of me all day at work or wherever I am, I think it would change every hour. So I've had to be a bit harsh and say, no, we'll stick with where we are. And I still changed it.
Yeah. And I know for a fact if I looked at if we did this and recorded this the same time tomorrow, I'm sure my top 10 would be different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But by the end of the recording, you'll have reminded me of 16 different films that I absolutely think are worthy of inclusion.
Exactly.
But
exactly.
I'm just going to stick with the ones I brung, as it were, and not sub in Fellowship of the Ring. Damn it!
Yeah.
I forget Fellowship.
Yeah.
But I'm going to stick with the ones I had already, because like it's a snapshot. It's a snapshot in time, and it is not absolute. And yeah, like I say, by its nature, it is reductive. It is impossible to rank these films. I mean, sometimes I've chosen a film by a director that I love, but I could have done a top 10 just by that director.
Yeah.
We have had these discussions. You have built your podcast on these discussions.
Yeah, exactly.
So, so yeah, it's an impossible task. Is basically it. Thank you guys for setting me in a totally impossible task.
Yeah.
Well, we're all in the same boat. That's the way I feel.
Yeah, that's the main thing, isn't it?
But we're kind of. It also, there were some movies that I was looking at and I'm thinking, is it a bit more trendier to put this in as a top in the top 10? You know, am I being a bit too obvious for some of the ones I've got in my top 10? But anyway,
but you can't overthink it either. You know,
you can't.
No.
Listen to your heart. You know,
that is right. That is right. Right. I do want to talk to you about Empire Magazine and some of the stuff going on there as well, but we'll do that a little bit later. We'll crack on with the actual business, and we hope you've all had a lovely Christmas as well. This will be coming out on Boxing Day, so this will be perfect.
Yay. Merry Christmas season,
indeed.
everybody.
Yes. Merry Christmas, everybody, and Merry holiday season. Right, Helen, kick us off with your number 10.
My number 10 is not Fellowship of the Ring. It is His Girl Friday. This is one of my all-time favorite comedies. It is a classic film that I go back to almost more than any other. And it's the kind of film that it gave me a false impression of how cool and glamorous journalism was going to be and how many fabulous hats I was likely to wear. But it's an impeccable film. It's Rosalind Russell and Cary Grant. She's the star reporter. He's the editor and ex-husband. And she is about to go off and get remarried and also retire. Now, these two things are both important. He doesn't want to lose the chance of getting back together. He also doesn't want to lose his star reporter. So he sort of coerces and convinces her to take on essentially one last story before she goes, and uses that as an attempt to win her back. It's all put together by Howard Hawks. It's got an incredible supporting cast. It has rapid fire dialogue, like jokes. I think it's 140 words a minute or something, which most films are about half that. So the jokes just keep coming at you. They're nonstop, and it's phenomenal. It's so knowing and sly and clever and funny. I just love it.
You know what? I've never seen that movie,
No.
and I feel like it's one of those movies that laid the path for a lot of comedies that came.
Huge influence on rom-coms after, at least the good rom-coms. I think if you're making a rom-com and you don't watch His Girl Friday, it's a bad decision. Basically, that you should absolutely go back to this well and be inspired by it.
Yeah, Neil, have you ever seen it?
A long time ago. It's been a long time since I saw it. I always remember one of my partners, she was a big fan of that years ago, and made me watch it, and I was a bit harumphy about watching it, but after I went through it, it was a joy. I can remember laughing, and it's an absolute joy, but I really do need to revisit it because it's been a long time.
I'm
gonna make it a mission, try and find it over the holidays.
Last I checked, it's streaming on a couple of different services, so it is very easy to get. But it's really worth your time because it will not bore you.
Okay,
really
we'll do that. Okay, Neil, you're number 10.
Well, this is the film that I did put back into the top 10 after watching it this weekend. I watched the extended version, and this is on honor of Helen as well. It's Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring. To me, the best Lord of the Ring or Hobbit movie of them all. It set the groundwork. It was, to me, the best directed. Well, I shouldn't say best directed. Visually, it was the one that pleased me the most. Just a complete package and set you on the path to the rest of the movies. I'd forgotten how good it really was because I sort of stayed away from them for a bit after after The Hobbit, really. I think that soured my taste buds a little bit on that universe. But I went back this weekend, watched Fellowship of the Ring, and thought, wow, this is an absolute blinder. And it reminded me how I felt when I first saw it in the cinema and came out. And it's just great. Everything in it. There's not a bad moment in the movie. And I like the fact, I do like the extended version as well, because it's unapologetic. You meander with it and it doesn't ever drag, ever, for a long movie, which is always a good sign.
I can remember all those years ago in Empire magazine when they had those, I think it was like artistic drawings of what some of the sets were going to be like. Thinking, how are they going to pull this off? This is either going to look really, really cheesy or it's going to look amazing. And luckily, it looked amazing.
It looks amazing.
It looks
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
And it's one of the only films I can remember where I've watched the extended version and it never felt like it was an extended version.
No, it doesn't.
Which is crazy.
It's phenomenal. It's one of the cinema going experiences of my life. I went to a midnight screening to see it like the moment it was possible. And I remember being so stressed, actively stressed beforehand of what if they've screwed it up? What if this is bad? What if they've messed with my Tolkien? You know, because this is a book I'd read at least yearly, pretty much all my life at that point. And then literally from the first words, I started to relax, like literally from the voiceover, from the Galadriel voiceover. And when you see that opening scene, I was like, oh my God, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
And by the time they got to the Mines of Moria, I was basically I think I might have been crying for joy, but I was definitely all in for anything Peter Jackson wanted to make for the next 10 years. I was just, yes, this is incredible.
But an amazing achievement to suck you into that world as well. For people that I know that have never read the books and just obsessed with the movies now, it's a real feat to have achieved that, I think.
But it really makes you scratch your head to wonder how they got The Hobbit so wrong.
I think there is well, I have a lot of opinions which I won't go into about prequelitis and sequelitis, and you know, you really have to be very careful when padding out what's already there, not to make it feel extraneous. And I think The Hobbit was maybe on the wrong side of that. Interestingly, I think the Rings of Power are on the right side of that this year. I actually think they did a very good job of developing stuff in ways that were surprising and interesting. But it is a very, it's actually in a weird way a more difficult book to adapt, because it is a straight linear story. There is no obvious breakpoint actually, and especially as soon as they decided to make it 3 films, I was kind of dreading that one. I didn't think that was going to work.
And sort of visually, I think the CGI, a lot of the CGI was too CGI, if you know what I mean.
There's a fine balance,
Yeah, wasn't it all like this 60 frames a second as well, which didn't help it as well. But there you go. Hey ho, indeed. Okay, my number 10 is I've got to thank Neil for this, because when we were chatting about this, I can't believe I left this one off, and it's a movie from 2022, I believe it was, Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Oh, great call.
I watched this, and it was one of those movies that I didn't go and see it at the cinema. I was waiting for it to come on a streaming service, and then it was a Sunday afternoon. I think my wife was at work, and I thought, I'm going to put it on. And it was like 1 minute crying, 1 minute laughing my head off, 1 minute wondering what the fuck was going on. It was just, I mean, Everything Everywhere All at Once is sort of like your experience watching the film, as well as what the film is about. But it is just, I love the Daniels. I love Swiss Army Man is one of, it would have been in my top 10, but there's not enough spaces for top 10, unfortunately. I think I'm in their groove, you know. I think I just get what they do, and it is just a joy from start to finish, that movie. And I implore anybody that thinks, oh, I'm not going to bother watching that,
think again.
Sausage fingers,
dildo fight,
butt plugs. I mean, what more do you need in a mainstream movie? It's just fantastic. Jamie Lee Curtis is fantastic in it. Everybody's fantastic in it. It is just one of those movies that hits every single note perfectly. So I don't know what you guys think about it, but Helen, what?
Oh, absolutely with you. I think it's extraordinary, and I think it is, as you say, it's like maximal filmmaking. It's maximalist filmmaking. They have thrown everything, including, as we say, butt plugs and sausage fingers and everything at the screen. And yet it is also a philosophical treatise, and it is also a really grounded family drama about connecting with your loved ones. It is, I mean, to be able to balance all those things and juggle all those things is an absolutely monumental achievement. It is right up there with the greatest filmmaking challenges of all time. I think it's amazing choice.
It's not a movie you can put on in the background while you're doing something else.
No.
You've got to. No. It makes you, because one minute they're speaking English, the next minute they're speaking another language, and then another language, and you've got to be focused on it. But it's not focused in a sense of like, I don't understand where this is going. There are certain points of it where it makes you go, I have no idea what's going on now. But it all comes, and it's just fantastic. It is just, I was so happy when I watched it that like, I wish I'd seen it at the cinema. I'd obviously wish I'd seen it at the cinema, but yeah, it's an experience. And again, anybody that is thinking, well, maybe I should watch it, just watch it and thank me later. That's all I'm going to say. Okay, yes. Helen, your number 9, please.
My number 9. This is the most recent one on my list. Because something like Everything Ever, I adored, but I feel like it needs to marinate with me a little bit longer before I was going to put it on here. So the most recent one is, I think it's 2016, Hunt for the Wilder People. I love this film with all my heart. I think Ricky Baker is one of the greatest comic characters and tragic characters of all time. I think Sam Neill has never been better, and I don't say that lightly. And I saw this I was on a set visit in Down Under, basically, so in about March, months and months before it came out here, and I basically spent the next 6 months telling people that they had to go see it as soon as it arrived, because it's extraordinary. And yeah, it hasn't got big bells and whistles. It's just a great piece of writing. It's an incredible piece of adaptation from the original book. Superb casting. Julian Dennison, what a talent. And Taika Waititi, I think, has never been better. And I know there are Jojo Rabbit fans out there, and I respect your right to be wrong, but this is a better film. And this should have won him the Oscars, or been nominated for the Oscars.
Yeah.
I mean, what about the latest Thor movie, though? Surely...
Yeah.
No, I mean, look, I even prefer this to Thor Ragnarok, which is much greater praise from me. And, he had made good films before. I enjoyed some of his earlier stuff, but this is a whole other level. I mean, What We Do in the Shadows, magnificent film as well, but come on. Wilder People, all the way.
That's great. You've seen that one, Neil?
I have, yeah. I've only seen it the once. But I've only seen it once, but it's a joy. It really is a joy. And like Helen said, Sam Neill's performance in it, wow. It's just
heartbreaking.
It is, just brilliant. Yeah. Brilliant.
But it's such a quiet little movie in some ways, isn't it? It's a movie that you sort of can easily miss, but when you do again, it's just magical. That movie, it's fantastic,
and the chemistry that they had as well.
Absolutely great odd couple.
Yeah,
it's
great one.
Great.
Go on then, Neil. You're number 9.
So this is one that went in and out for a long time in my list, and it's Goodfellas, Martin Scorsese's Goodfellas. I put it in there basically because how do I word this? I find it fascinating, this movie, as well as just perfection. They tried to redo it again with Casino, didn't he? Which just didn't work, and it failed. But Goodfellas, to me, is probably one of the finest films with a voiceover. The narrative takes you from the beginning to the end. The fact that it's based on a true story as well is phenomenal. I think everybody in it, and I think Ray Liotta has never been better, or hadn't ever been better. I just think I talk about perfect movies, and this is a perfect gangster movie. Well, one of them, to me. And it says it all. And the fact that Joe Pesci as well.
Oh my God.
Never seen anybody such a psychopath in my life. Yeah. You're actually worried watching him, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Yeah.
This for me is one of those movies that you feel like has to be in the top 10. It's not in my top 10, but you feel like it has to be in the top 10. No, it's just not. Helen?
No, I thought about it. I did think long and hard about it. It's I admire it enormously. I think it is flawless. As you say, an extraordinary performances, incredible writing, incredible camera work. Obviously the famous, tracking shot, but everything in that is just so beautifully judged. I just don't have the love generally for gangster movies as a thing. I think I just don't. It's not the genre I vibe with as much. So so I guess that's probably why it didn't make my list. But I admire it, and I don't know if it's my favorite. It isn't my favorite Scorsese actually either. It's my favorite is probably either Wolf of Wall Street or Silence. Controversially.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Silence.
So
Okay.
yeah, I think Silence is extraordinarily powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, blame a Catholic school perhaps, but I think it's
Well, I was umming and ahhing because I'm a huge fan of King of Comedy, and I thought, which? And I thought, no, I will put Goodfellas because it's the one I seem to go back to and watch more than King of Comedy. Taxi Driver's another one as well. I think Scorsese. Well, he is.
I mean, this is not the controversial, but yeah, you're right. He's incredible. I actually think you're even a little bit harsh on Casino. I think Casino, by the standards of any other filmmaker, would be considered a masterpiece. I think it's only by Scorsese standards that we're a bit like, well, it's okay, isn't it?
I mean, it is good and it's very watchable, but it just reminds me far too much of
Goodfellas. Yeah,
far too much.
Scorsese is one of those people you could do a top 10 on its own of, isn't it? I mean,
yeah. And I'm sure we will one day.
I'm sure we will one day. Absolutely. Okay, my number 9 is one that for me I've always thought of as a masterclass of acting, and it's Glengarry Glen Ross.
Oh wow!
It's I don't know what it is. It's the same as if you hear two musicians talking about working in the studio, or you hear a producer with all those banks of knobs and sliders and buttons, and they'll say, well, we do this and we use the DX4 for that, and I get fascinated. I have no idea. They're talking a different language. So whenever I watch Glengarry Glen Ross, it's such a bleak looking, rain-soaked movie. There doesn't seem to be any colour in that movie. It's all drab greys and beige and fawn and browns and stuff. But I get sucked in just by the fact that the acting in it is just mesmerizing, and it doesn't matter whether it's just everybody. It's an amazing cast, but you get. And we watched it. We went to the it was a local
theatre.
Cheltenham.
It was Cheltenham,
didn't we? And even then, I mean, it wasn't. I didn't think it was on par with the movie, obviously, but it was still like you get sucked in by just how everybody is fighting for something in that movie, whether you're in power or whether you're not. And I don't know what you guys think of that as a movie, but I had to be in my top 10. Helen?
Oh, I love a bit of David Mamet. So yeah, I think it's extraordinary. And anything also with Jack Lemmon.
Jack Lemmon.
Also immediately goes up my personal rankings. No, I think it's wonderful. My favorite Mamet though is State and Maine. I don't know if people have seen that, but it is.
Is that the one with William H. Macy?
Yes, in a small role. It's a Philip Seymour Hoffman romantic lead movie though, which we didn't get too many of. So it gets bonus points for that. But again, both cases, incredible ensemble casts, incredible dialogue, just immensely quotable. The steak knives, the Cadillac, the fuck you, frankly. Like it's an incredible movie.
Yeah. There's also footage on YouTube of Al Pacino playing the Jack Lemmon part live on stage.
Yes, of course he did it on Broadway a few years ago.
Which again is fascinating because going from the brash and the cocky Ricky Roma to being like the Jack Lemmon Shelley that's like again fighting for his daughter, and it's heartbreaking, but it's amazing.
Who played his role on Broadway? Who played the Al Pacino?
What's his name? Is that guy that always he's in like gangster movies and
it's going to know me now as well. We're going to have to look it up. Sorry.
Yeah, I can see his face. Is it Bobby Cannavale?
Oh, might be. Yeah. That would make sense.
I think it was him that played the Ricky Roma part, I think. But yeah, it's fantastic. Okay. Helen, your number 8, please.
My number 8. Okay, so I was trying to think my way through film history and make sure I wasn't like forgetting anybody. And so I did think about silent movies, and I decided to put in The General, the Buster Keaton film. The General of the title is a train that he really, really loves. And it is one of the funniest films I've ever seen. It's an astonishingly funny film. It is problematic because he is it's basically set during the US Civil War, and he is a Confederate. So like, you know, when he kind of like, spoiler, like it's a happy ending for him, and like he does something quote unquote good to help out his side, but you're a bit like, oh, I am conflicted about this happy ending because I don't want your side to win. Oh no. But at the same time, it's Buster Keaton at his absolute finest. It is just a beautiful performance, incredible physical comedy, obviously, but also just incredible comedy, and the scale of the filmmaking is off the charts. You know, you've got them crashing actual trains off actual bridges because what else are you going to do, you know, to get the effect you need? So I loved it. I love it. So yes, problematic. I'm apologizing for that right now. I'm flagging that up right now. But even with that, it's still my number 8.
I always see films like that, and I always get the feeling that health and safety wasn't a thing back in those days.
No, very much not.
When you look at Keystone Cops and things like that, the way that they're tumbling around, you think they're not on wires or they're not stuntmen. They just grab them and they're just chucking them off of cars and buildings and
yeah. Well, if you've seen The Fall, the Tarsem Singh movie, with Lee Pace as a stuntman who has been gravely injured, basically making these movies, and it finishes with this kind of reel of stuntmen of the period doing those crazy things, and it's astonishing. Yeah, I've been interviewing some stuntmen recently, stunt performers, and what they do is just mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing. Even now it's mind-blowing, never mind back then.
I'm gonna have to watch that one. I've just
No, I don't.
Put it on IMDb, and some of the clips in the trailer are frightening. It's just like people just falling off of stairs and stuff, and it's crazy, absolutely crazy.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to watch that one.
But I will put the trailer on the video playlist for our Patreon fans, and you can see just the sort of stuff that Buster Keaton puts himself through. That's crazy. Okay, then Neil, your number 8, please.
So, talk about perfect movies. This is a perfect movie to me, hence in my top 10. I was actually in London when they were filming this back in 80, I think it was, or 81. It's American Wealth in London. So I was only a young kid. I knew nothing about what was going on in front of me, but knew the sort of the title when it came out, and hence was told about it, and always desperately wanted to see it. Saw it, probably too young, but frightened myself to death watching it. So I didn't see it again subsequently for a few more years, and then fell in love with it. I think it's just the perfect combination of horror, comedy, and heart. It's got a lot of heart. I love everybody in it. They're all great. And a young Rick Mail. Let's give a shout out to Rick Mail, sat in the pub there. But yeah, everything about it is just a joy. And it's 90 minutes of a roller coaster of emotions, of joys, and it's always nice to see a 90-minute movie now, isn't it?
That was sort of Kevin Turvey era of Rick Mail, wasn't it?
Wasn't it? Yeah, it was just before he came out and did that.
Yeah. I can't remember what show that used to be on. Was it The Kick of the 80s or something like that?
Something like that on Channel 4, wasn't it? Yeah.
Showing our age now.
Sorry, I don't. I'm nodding my head gamely, but I don't.
So I was fascinated with this movie anyway to begin with, and like I said, I ruined it for myself watching it too. I was allowed to watch it too young, scared, and then wouldn't go back to it. And then subsequently, I think I've watched it every year since. I love it, and I love introducing it. So I've just introduced it recently to my daughter, and she watched it and was falling in love with it. She is 22. She's 22. Yeah, she's 3. My son, not so much. He just like, But even the effects, the Rick Baker effects, I must mention those, are just still hold up so well today. And you know, I love a practical effect over a CGI effect. I really do. And I just think it's marvelous. And I don't think there's ever been a werewolf change as good still today.
Yeah. Helen, thoughts?
Yeah. Again, I admire rather than probably love. I think I saw it a bit too late in my life, and I think I suffered from not fancying Jenny Agutter as much as most of the male population does. So, so maybe I don't have that visceral connection, that I know a lot of men have. But no, it's a phenomenal, and those effects are astonishing. I think it's that great kind of contradiction almost of effects work, that kind of physical special effect if done well, may not be 100% convincing, but it stays then at that level of convincing.
Yes.
Whereas, you know, visual effects done as well as you can at that time risk sliding over the years, you know.
Yeah.
So it's a really tough call, I think, for a lot of filmmakers.
And I always find it amazing that David Norton didn't get sort of any sort of fame from it, because I think he's so good in that movie, so good, you know. But he sort of vanished. I know he did a couple of like sort of Porky-esque sort of films afterwards, or whatever he did. But he sort of vanished, didn't he?
Yeah, it's a shame.
There you go. Okay, my number 8 is another Jack Lemmon film.
Hey!
It's Some Like It Hot. I think is one of the greatest comedies. I think in our top 10 comedies, it was high in our comedy movies. I've never got tired of watching this. We say about Jenny Agutter, I think Marilyn Monroe looks about as gorgeous and beautiful as she ever did in any movie in this one. And Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon together are just, I mean, fantastic. And I've always said, whenever we've talked about this, it's amazing that they've never remade this movie. You know, they've never done a remake of it. But I'm so glad that they haven't, because I feel it was like lightning in a bottle, and I feel that there's no way, because I think I've said it before. I think there was a rumor this is going back decades, that David Bowie and Mick Jagger were supposed to do a remake of it, and I don't think that would have really worked.
That would have been a very different energy. I mean, you know, if you're going to remake it, you almost would have to do something that weird, wouldn't you?
You would have to, yeah.
Just to,
And I would hope that they got the person who directed the dance in the street video to do the movie.
Wouldn't that be
It'd be amazing?
Wouldn't that be great? Yeah. But I mean, it's for me, it's one of my favorite black and white movies. Just one of my favorite, obviously one of my favorite movies. I think it's the highest one in my top 10 that's black and white. Yeah, it is. But yeah, I don't know what you guys think. I mean, I'm assuming that
I'm the same as you. It could easily tomorrow be in my top 10, and it could easily be out of it. It's a perfect movie, isn't it? It's perfect comedy, like you said. It's hilarious, and the chemistry between the three leads is just amazing. Great script, great direction. Yeah, perfect.
Helen?
Yeah, I adore it. I have gone for something very similar, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But I absolutely adore it. I'm a huge Marilyn Monroe fan, and she is unbelievable. I mean, she was that was at the point where her personal life was really, really going off a cliff. You know, her marriage to Arthur Miller was breaking down. She suffered a miscarriage, I think, during filming or just before. She was really going through it emotionally. And yet she did that, you know, on screen. And, you know, Billy Wilder, some people on that film said unkind things about her during the years. You know, there was the famous Tony Curtis quote, which he later disowned, about it was like kissing Hitler. Billy Wilder, you know, talked about the fact that it took sort of 50 takes for her to say pass the bourbon. But the thing is, if you watch the bourbon scene, she is off the charts brilliant in it. She is unbelievable. So when he got that 50th take, you know, it was magnificent. And yeah, that's what we now have. So yes, it may have been difficult, Billy, but Jesus, it was worth it. So yeah, I adore it. It's flawless. I watch it a lot. I can recite whole scenes. Magnificent.
Yeah, I've not seen Blonde yet. But have you seen it, Helen?
I have, yeah. Have.
And what did you think of it? Because I saw a lot of people was really coming down hard on it.
I'm very conflicted. I think Blonde is immensely unfair to Marilyn Monroe, because she was a huge talent, and it was not entirely a native talent. It was something she worked really hard on, and she learned, you know, and she put effort into it. She learned how to be a star. She learned how to pop off the screen. She learned how to explode out of photos and just look like the most incredible person you'd ever seen in your life.
Yeah.
And the movie treats all that like it was native to her and just something that was there. And I think that's entirely unfair. So I don't think it gives her nearly enough credit. But I think it's a fascinating film in its own right. And I think it is I'm so thrilled that any director was given the license and the budget to make something so completely barmy in this very sort of algorithmic age. I think I'm so glad it exists, even if I have issues with a lot of the way it treats Marilyn herself.
So you'd recommend it?
Yes, with that caveat that it's really fucking weird. I mean,
Right.
he's basically what he's done is he bases scenes in the film around still photos from her life. So it will change aspect ratio, it will change from black and white to color and back again and back again and back again. Because he doesn't care about consistency. He just wants to recreate these iconic images of Marilyn and use those as the basis of his film. So that in itself is an audacious and a mad idea. And then it's a pretty audacious and a mad story on top of that. So yeah, you do have to have a certain amount of tolerance, I think, to go into it. And if you are, like me, a diehard Marilyn fan, there are things that are going to make you grind your teeth.
Right.
But at the same time, I mean, Ana de Armas, unbelievable in it.
Okay. That's
So you have to give it a go.
Something to watch over the holidays, definitely. Okay, Helen, your number 7 then, please.
My number 7. This is one of my personal favorite films. Now, when I'm asked what is your favorite film, this is one of my answers, along with something like The Princess Bride, which I adore, but will admit is not 100% perfect. And that's what I'm kind of going for with this list. But my number 7 is Cyrano de Bergerac. This is the not the 50s version. It has its defenders. Not last year's musical, which I had issues with, but the 1990s version with Jean-Paul Rappeneau directing and the extremely problematic Gérard Depardieu starring. I'm not here to defend him. I'm here to defend the film. The film is beautiful. It's wildly romantic. It has an incredible score. It has beautiful, these huge silken gowns and stuff in the costumes. And it is absolutely unashamedly, melodramatically a romance. And I love it. And the poetry of it is kind of doggerel. It's kind of, rhyming couplets, which wasn't even fashionable when it was written, never mind nowadays. But the subtitles, actually, the translation of this particular film into English was a great translation. I think it was Anthony Burgess or somebody did it. Great translation. But it's nonsense, but I love it. It's about a man with a giant nose who falls in love with a beautiful woman and doesn't know how to tell her. So he helps his handsome friend tell her instead. But I love it.
Yes,
yeah, I've never seen that version, I must admit, but it's because the one that came out with the one that
Peter Dinklage.
Peter Dinklage. That seemed to get mixed reviews as well, because there was some people that were really saying that this is Oscar. He's going to, get an Oscar nomination for it, and some were saying that it was just terrible. So again, I mean, as a fan of Cyrano de Bergerac, what did you think?
I liked aspects of it. I think he's a phenomenal actor. I think he's great. He's not a great singer, but he was good enough to carry the tunes, which is all maybe you need sometimes. My issues with it, I am very attached, as I say, to the play and to this film, and even to an Americanized version like Roxanne. It left out two of my favorite lines,
really?
And I couldn't quite forgive it. So that's honestly one of my big issues with the film. But also the music didn't pop for me brilliantly. I liked it, but I didn't love it. So yeah, it's good. It's a good film. It's just not Cyrano de Bergerac.
How many times have you seen it on stage, Helen?
Only once in person, actually. I haven't seen a lot on stage. I saw the James McAvoy one, which was kind of modernized, kind of rap battles rather than poetry battles. That also left out one of my favorite lines and changed the ending in a way that I wasn't happy with. I'm very protective, basically. I have very strong feelings on this.
So, Pav, you can borrow my VHS of it. I've still got it.
Oh, well, I haven't got a video to play it on. I mean, we've moved on now, mate.
I know. I found all my VHSs, and there it was on the top. It just brought it straight to memory. I thought, wow. But I haven't got a VHS to watch it either.
It's a great film, and great score as well. If people haven't heard the score. Beautiful score.
Wonderful. Neil, your number 7, please.
So I'm going to say it's Tarantino's debut. It's Reservoir Dogs. It was a breath of fresh air when this came in. I can still listen to the quotable dialogue now. The realistic dialogue of it. Again, it's a short movie, isn't it? It's a 90-minute movie. I mean, sometimes I wish Tarantino would learn to use the edit button on certain movies, but it was refreshing. I still find it refreshing, but I think I find the excitement because I was one of the people lucky enough to see it on its first run when nobody knew about it. And I was singing praises, and me and my friend literally went 3 times in a week to go and see it because it was just blew me away. And I still find it as visceral. No, I still find it as engaging with the conversation and everything. It's just, yeah, I love it. I love it. I really do. And I still think it might be Tarantino's best film.
I agree with you. I actually, the only one that I actually loved as much is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which I know is the uncool answer, but like I thought that was great. And but yeah, I think Reservoir Dogs is fantastic.
Yeah. It really is. I mean, the more I watch it, more again after seeing, the things like Django and Kill Bill and all that, and I go back and I think, I wish he'd do another one like this again somewhere along the line. Not the same, but with that sort of style and dialogue. And
I think maybe Hateful Eight was an attempt to a degree.
It was, but I just thought I love Hateful Eight. I didn't love it when I first watched it, bizarrely, but I've now fallen in love with it. It's a stage play, isn't it, on the screen?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is basically Reservoir Dogs, I suppose.
Yeah. I can't believe I haven't got a Tarantino movie in my top 10. But the trouble is I was thinking which one, and it seemed like each one cancelled out the other. So that I could have ended up with 5 Tarantino movies in my top 10, and I've ended up with none, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But I don't think I can actually pick which one, because I love what I love about something like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is the fact that it is sometimes so slow that you just get engulfed in the world that he's created, even though it's a real world and it's a world that actually existed as opposed to something that he's made up. But Hateful Eight is another one. Like, there's so many people that I know that go, God, it's so long, and nothing happens for like ages. And I goes, but that's what's so beautiful about it. And because every time with Tarantino, if someone is leaving a room or entering a room, you think they're going to get killed. They're going to get shot in the head. Something bad is going to happen. That whole scene, I know it's spoilers, but in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, when Brad Pitt goes to the ranch. Oh, yeah. Every time you think, don't go up to that house, Brad. Don't go into that room. Because something's going to happen to you. Something bad's going to happen. So you're on the edge of your seat, and in the end, nothing happens. No. And you think, oh, geez, I can't take another half hour of this. But that's his gift. But I also love his more the visceral ones and the more short, sharp shock ones like Kill Bill and stuff like that. And I couldn't pick one. I just couldn't pick one. But I completely agree with you, Neil. But
it also, I mean, I must give a shout out on this as well to the soundtrack. It was the first of those songs, bringing in cool songs that you've probably forgotten or hadn't heard before, and made a soundtrack that just people have mimicked forever since, and copied. But I was quickly going to ask Helen, have you read the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood book?
Yeah.
And what did you think of that?
Oh, I hated it.
Really?
I had to go back and watch the film and make sure the film was good.
Oh, right. I sort of thought it opened up the universe a little bit more. I enjoyed it.
The opening up was interesting, but I just find it at first I thought he was, I'll be honest, I thought it was bad writing. And at first I thought it was deliberate, like he was going for a Pulp Fiction kind of a feel. And then when you get into these lengthy digressions about, films he's either made up or films that exist and he's seen and he just thinks deserve a wider audience, so he's talking about at length, you're like, oh no, it's just that's what Tarantino wants to write, So it kind of I really struggled with it. I really didn't love it.
Okay.
I'm halfway through the audio book. I listened to it at work, and
cool. That might be a better way to do it, to be honest, because I think then maybe more of the personality would come across.
Yeah,
who's doing the reading?
Jennifer Jason Leigh does does the narration. Okay. So it is interesting. It is interesting, but okay. My number 7. There are so many versions of this movie, and I feel it's a movie that was way before its time. Blade Runner is my my number 7. I'm going to go for the final cut because I feel that it's the definitive version, I think, and it's the version that gets rid of all those little moments that, lip syncing and male stuntmen crashing through glass and stuff, that just those little moments that you think, oh, I wish they just changed that. But as a movie, I think the special effects were sort of way ahead of their time. which again still hold out now. The Vangelis soundtrack is just breathtaking. Ridley
beautiful.
Scott at the top of his game, and every single person in the cast. Harrison Ford is fantastic. Daryl Hannah's fantastic. Rutger Hauer.
Oh my God!
The whole
Steals the
Tears in Rain is just fantastic. And Neil, I'm surprised. Or either that or it's number one. I'm surprised it's not in your top 10.
I will say it was in there yesterday. Well, no, probably in there yesterday. Probably in there last week. It's been in and out. It's another one. It'll easily be in my top 20.
Number 11. Number 11.
Yeah,
Yes,
easily.
yes.
But there's so many of these movies.
Yeah.
Let's not worry.
What I think is extraordinary about Blade Runner is the fact that every single science fiction movie since has had to reckon with it. So there are the ones that kind of mimic its aesthetic to some degree, and there are the ones that set themselves in opposition to it and try to go in completely the other direction. But nobody can ignore it.
No,
it feels like no one since has ignored it. And maybe you could maybe say, well, actually that's true of Alien and Blade Runner is just building on that. And yes, we can have that discussion, but I'm not going to. We're going to talk about Blade Runner. But I think that is extraordinary, and it's testament to all those elements, and the just the way it looks is off the charts. Off the charts, great.
Yeah, and we're 3 years past the time, and yes, we've got the rain, but we haven't got the flying cars. What the fuck is going on?
What the hell, man? Come on.
3 years. I mean, 3 years, and we're still nowhere near. We're nowhere near flying cars.
Have we got the replicants then?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, you can
We
get.
might have.
Let's say no.
Who knows?
Well, I always had a bit of a problem with that. And I have the same issue with Battlestar Galactica, which I also adore. Come on, guys! If they're that much stronger than humans, and they have all of these different capabilities, there's another way to tell apart from the void camp test. There is. You're maybe not using it, but there definitely is another way to do this. So
plot hole.
Yeah, come on.
There you go. Okay then, Helen, you're number 6 then, please.
My number 6 is A Matter of Life and Death. Because again, I was kind of trying to think through, okay, am I being unfair to the sort of the canon and not giving them due weight and just going for my favorites? Obviously the temptation to put in an Avengers movie is strong, but I resisted. Spoiler. But but I kind of looked at a few other top 10s, top 100s and stuff, and this one leapt out at me as oh, actually, that is an astonishing film. This is the Powell and Pressburger film from, was it during the war or just after the war? Just after the war, about a British airman who is shot down or he isn't shot down and killed. He's due to be shot down and killed, but somehow weirdly survives and has this affair, or has this love affair over the radio with this radio operator who's talking to as he's flying to his death. And basically gets hauled up to heaven to say, well, I'm sorry, you're dead. Actually, you're supposed to be dead. And he's like, well, this isn't fair. I've just fallen in love. And so there's a sort of trial element of this guy fighting for his life to be with this woman he's just fallen in love with. But it's a brilliant film. It's visually astonishing. It has these incredible Technicolor visions of heaven, which have been wildly influential since on everything from The Big Lebowski to Bill and Ted. And it's impeccably sort of a weird mix of British stiff upper lip war drama and this magical, not even magical realist, this full-on magical fantasy vision of the afterlife. And I just think it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
See, I've heard the name of that movie, but I had no idea what it was about. And you just did your job there, Helen, because it makes me want to watch. It makes me want to watch the movie. So I'm gonna have to.
David Niven, isn't it?
It's David
Niven, yeah, and Kim Hunter, yeah. It's
right.
It's gorgeous, but I feel like any Powell and Pressburger movie, you're generally onto a winner. It's still going to be vital and exciting and interesting and a beautiful human story, but with a lot of scope and scale and visual dazzle as well. They are just some of the greatest who ever lived. And but I think this is their masterpiece. Other people will disagree with me and talk about Black Narcissus and Red Shoes and all the rest, but I think this is a beautiful film.
Okay. Do you know if it's on any streaming services at all?
I know I'm pretty sure it's on the BFI player. I don't know which other ones it's on at the moment. I mean, most things can be found on Amazon for a couple of quid, this is definitely worth the price of a coffee if it is there. So, yeah.
Okay. Another one to add to the list.
Sorry,
Definitely.
I'm sorry.
No. Don't apologise. Don't apologise. Okay, Neil, you're number 6, please.
So my number 6 would probably easily fit in the same shoe as Helen's number 6. It's app that we're doing the Christmas special or the Christmas episode. It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, I just honestly, every year this will be watched on Christmas Eve by me, hopefully the rest of the family, but usually by me. I can't get enough of it, and I think it's a beautiful, beautiful tale, beautiful story.
Yeah,
relevant now as it was then, and I wish more people would watch it. And I've heard tell recently that they're talking of remaking it.
No.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a million times. If you watch as many Christmas movies as I do, they have remade it a lot.
Yeah.
But never its equal.
No.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's the same year as Matter of Life and Death, actually.
There we are.
There you go.
Yeah, it's just we talk of perfect movies. It's another perfect movie.
And it was a flop when it was released, wasn't it?
It was, but then it did it did build up attention over time. Like I think it got a couple of Oscar nods that year, so it didn't entirely,
A bit of a Shawshank of its time.
Yeah, I think that's a good comparison. Yeah, very much so. No, I'm with you. I think it's a magnificent film. I think it's Frank Capra's best, probably. I'll have to think about that. I think what makes it work and what makes it stand out from a lot of Christmas movies, not all, but a lot, is that it has real tragedy and pathos and sadness and darkness in its first half. So when you get the big sort of explosion of Christmassiness at the end, it isn't saccharine, it isn't too much, it isn't overdone. It's just what you need after watching a man give up on his dreams for 2 hours straight to do the right thing and to try and help other people. It's a wonderful film. It's a Wonderful Life.
Indeed. And I'll tell you, I don't know how many times I've seen this. I probably watch it a couple of times every Christmas because it just gets you every time. But that moment that Mr. Gower smacks the young George Bailey across the ear near the start, I flinch every time when I know it's coming. I know it's coming, but that is a hell of a wallop that he gives that young George Bailey. I mean, it's great. No wonder his ear's bleeding. But yeah, it's absolutely...
It is. It's just magical, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, to be fair, I could watch it any time of the year, but I do tend to bring it out on Christmas Eve evening.
Right. That's the tradition, is it?
Yeah. It's just, I don't feel Christmas has started for me until I've seen that movie.
Yeah, same. It tends to go on in our house at some point on Christmas Eve. I'm also seeing it in the cinema this year.
Wow.
As well, just to double up, just to make sure.
Yeah. And we have spoken about it obviously on it was this time last year with our top 10 Christmas movies, and I know that our listeners are now going, Pav, go on, do it. So, hello, movie house. I've got to do it every time we talk about it.
Oh, the old building and loan.
That's the one.
Oh, it's fantastic. Anyway, my number 6. Maybe it's higher in your tables. I don't know, but you have to have Jaws as one of the greatest movies ever made.
Well, that's my number 5, Pav.
That's your number 5. Okay. And I don't think there's really anything else you can say about Jaws that hasn't already been said and written about and spoken about on various other mediums and of whatever. It is, for me, a perfect movie. I don't think, I'm trying to think if there's any parts of it where I would go, yeah, well, that bit is maybe, or that's the bit was a bit slow. I think it's perfectly directed. I think it's considering what Steven Spielberg was up against making that movie, the fact that he made a masterpiece out of something that probably almost broke him, I think, is just amazing.
But I don't think he'd have had the. I was going to say, I don't think he'd have had the movie that we've got if he hadn't have had those problems, and hence like not seeing the shark for so long. It just builds, doesn't it?
Because if that movie was being made today, it would be a CGI shark. It would be, well, I mean, look at
we've seen the Meg, we've seen
What's
Deep
wrong with
Blue
the
Sea.
Meg?
Hey, nothing is wrong with the Meg.
But that's exactly what Jaws would have been if it was being made today. It would have been a 100-foot shark. And it would have been, you'd looked at it and gone, oh, okay, it's a CGI shark. Whereas that is, it's like Michael Myers. It's like, it's like you only see a little bit glimpse of him, and it is horrendous when you see him, and you think, God, what is he going to do? So
it's also like the two movies, isn't it? You've got the start bit with the Jaws attacks and the shark attacks and everything going on the beach and all of that, and then you've got the next part, the next act, with the three of them on the boat out and catching it, and that's as much of a joy to watch, just the three of those interacting.
Oh my God,
Robert Shaw.
Oh,
I mean,
magnificent.
I mean, I always think it always reminds me, and I must watch it again, Man for All Seasons, Helen. Robert Shaw in that.
Lovely,
He's so good, isn't he?
So good.
So good.
He's just magnificent. I don't have this in my top 10 because, spoiler, I went for another Spielberg. And again, I could make an entire list of Spielberg movies and frequently do. But I'm a huge fan of this. I saw the stage show, The Shark is Broken. Last year, I went to Martha's Vineyard where they shot, and I did the Jaws tour around the island.
Really? And
I even hired a little bike, and I cycled across the island to the place where they built Quint's shack for the shot where they're leaving the harbor. Which they unfortunately they built it without planning permission to keep it up, because they weren't allowed to dig proper foundations, so they could only build it and then immediately demolish it. And then I think the authorities on Martha's Vineyard have been kicking themselves ever since that they tore down this tourist trap immediately after filming. But I went and saw basically, like, Chief Brody's office and the coroner's office and the shop where they go to buy the stuff to build the signs and all that kind of stuff. It's an incredible film. It's an absolutely incredible film. I love it.
Yeah,
absolutely. Anything else to say about it, Neil?
What else is there? Just to say, if you've never seen it, what the hell are you playing at?
I know. Come on, guys. Come on.
Yeah. And I can always remember I had a scratched retina because of this movie. Myself and my cousin were watching it, and the moment when, I can't remember the name of the guy, is it Ben? When his head pops out under the boat. We both sort of went behind this cushion, and she sort of went to go and grab the cushion, and her finger went straight into my eye.
Oh!
And I don't know whether it's just my mind, but every time I see that scene, my eye tingles. So it's weird. I don't know whether it's a subconscious thing or whether it is a physical thing that my eye remembers when it sees it. I don't know. That's completely.
Well, we have to ask Helen the question: is Jaws a horror or a thriller?
Oh boy. I mean, first of all, I don't care. But secondly, if you put a gun to my head, I'd probably call it a thriller.
Right.
I'll be honest. But I mean, yeah, if people want to claim it's a horror, I'm not going to argue. And it's the same like Die Hard, a Christmas movie, yes, but also I don't care. It's still Die Hard, so it gets to go home with that at night. So who needs it to be a Christmas movie? Why do you care so much? You have not found a loophole in Christmas, guys. It's a Christmas movie. Okay, let's move on.
There you go, Neil. You were told then.
Sorry, I didn't mean it towards you. No. I just meant general, guys. Come
Previous podcasts, it was a question we genuinely asked.
It was, absolutely.
Every guest.
Yeah, indeed it was. Right then, Helen, your number 5 then, please.
My number 5 is, this had to be here, Singing in the Rain. Again, a perfect film. I think it is the epitome and the pinnacle of the movie musical. It was written for movies, unlike a lot of musicals, and you can kind of tell. And it is particularly 3 performers at the height of their powers, particularly those core 3. But even the surrounding cast are off the chart. Lena Lamont, my God. She is one of the great comic creations, but Gene Kelly at his most handsome and talented, Donald O'Connor literally running up walls for our amusement, and that music, just magnificent.
It's such a burst of color as well. That movie is just fantastic.
I actually stumbled across it again. It was on BBC 4 literally a week or 2 ago, and it just started, so it was a pure bliss to sit down and watch it all again. Nice little surprise. It's a great movie, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is. And it was always one of those staples. It was always one that was part of a joke about Christmas, wasn't it? Oh, you got to watch Singing in the Rain and Wizard of Oz and Sound of Music. You got to watch all those.
It's like The Great Escape was always on Easter for some reason. Like, I don't know what's Eastery about The Great Escape, but somehow Easter bank holiday is always on TV.
Yeah. I mean, that is a great one. It's not in my top 10, obviously, but but I just love Gene Kelly. There's just something about that guy. He was like, I think I've said this before when we spoke about top 10 musicals. He looks like the guy next door. because
I
he's quite short. He's not, you know, but when he moves, he's sort of like, it's just, he was completely different to someone like Fred Astaire. Fred Astaire seemed to look very elegant when he danced, whereas Gene Kelly seemed to be very, I don't want to say that it's sort of like normal, because what he did wasn't normal, but he just made it look effortless. But he didn't seem to have the same kind of grace that Fred Astaire had. Maybe because he was a little bit shorter. I don't know.
I don't know about Guy Next Door, because I have never lived next door to somebody that handsome. Like, he was
true.
off the charts handsome.
Yeah,
but I get what you mean about, like, he just seemed to like move naturally into dance from just playing tennis or something. Like, he seemed like a guy's guy who was just walking down the street, and then suddenly this would happen. Whereas Fred Astaire always seemed like he was about to start dancing. 100%.
Right then, Neil, your number 5 was Jaws.
It was.
My number 5 is a movie that, again, I think I've spoken to it about so many times on various podcasts, and it's Field of Dreams. There's perfect movie again. Perfect movie. We're saying that more than we say iconic now, Neil.
Yeah.
As a perfect movie, but Kevin Costner at the absolute top of his game, in one of the sweetest, batshit crazy storylines that you know. I've told it so many times. You've got to see Field of Dreams. What's it about? Well, these dead baseball players come back to this Iowa cornfield. Well, that sounds crap. Oh no, it isn't. It's amazing. The music is fantastic. It's just. It doesn't feel. I mean, it was, what is it, 80, 87, 88 maybe?
Yeah, some late 80s. It
doesn't feel like it's an 80s movie. It feels like it's timeless. It feels like it's almost Capra-esque, if you like. It just doesn't feel like it's set in a particular decade. I think it definitely has aged really well. I mean, Costner obviously looks 15 in it compared to what he looks like now in his Yellowstone sort of guise and that, with his gruff voice. But and I always loved his hair. I've said it before. I think his hair is fantastic in that movie. I don't know. I've got a thing about hair because I haven't got any. But I just there is something about his hair in that movie. It is absolutely gorgeous.
It is good hair. It is good hair. It's a beautiful movie. I think it's a great father-son story, and I tend to sometimes bristle at the endless father complexes in movies. Like, every single Tom Cruise movie of the 80s, I think, had a father complex. And he played it in so many different ways, and they're all brilliant. But, like, come on, Tom, you know, thank God you've moved on. And so I sometimes get a little bit tired, because there are very few mother-daughter films of the same power and they're given the same kind of support by the studios in history. So, you know, sometimes I get cross. Having said that, this, I think, is one of those really moving ones. This is one where it speaks of a kind of universal love and longing and loss for your loved ones, and that's a beautiful thing. Yeah, and it's magical. It's literally magical as well.
It is.
Yeah. Burt Lancaster in there as Archibald Moonlight
James Earl
Graham.
Jones.
James.
Come on.
Yeah.
Okay, Helen, your number 4, please.
My number 4. Again, I was kind of thinking, what if I was trying to think of, you know, genres and art forms that I hadn't thought enough about. So silent film had to be in there, animation had to be in there, and I could have gone for a lot of animation, but I've just gone for Spirited Away. There we go. It could have been My Neighbor Totoro. Even if even once I thought it's probably Miyazaki, that didn't narrow it down that much. But Spirited Away, I think, has the scope and the scale. It has the ambition. It has mythological roots. It has flights of wild fancy, unlike anything you'd seen before. It has suit sprites. It has dragons. I'm a huge dragon fan. You guys, you can see a couple of dragons over on the shelf behind me here. I just think it's beautiful and weird, and it doesn't make any sense, you know, a lot of the time to ignorant Westerners like myself who didn't know a lot about Japanese mythology going into this. But the more you learn about the film, the more you unpack the layers, the more you delve into it. I mean, even on the surface, it's a great story about a spoiled little girl sort of learning to fend for herself, learning to cope with a new place, becoming a bit more independent, kind of a coming of age story to some degree. But as you unpack all the layers under that, I think it just gets richer and richer and deeper and deeper. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
You're a fan of that, Neil, aren't you?
I
still
am.
haven't
Yeah, I've
seen
spoken
it.
to
I
Albert.
hold my hands up and say,
I've spoken about
I
it
know.
before.
Put it on the list.
I will put it on the list. It's on
Yeah,
there. It's on there. It's on there.
I've always classed that as my favorite of the studio's animation, and I think it's one of the most accessible as well.
Yeah.
To be fair, anybody that I've lent it to, or did lend it to until I lost it.
There you go. Don't lend your
Shall I
movies
name
out,
and
Neil.
shame them? Shall I name and shame them? I want my DVD back, please. Yeah, they've all said the same. You know, they've managed to watch it and finish it, and really enjoy it. So you need to watch it, Pav. You need to get yourself
you really
immersed
do.
in
You
this.
said
so
it
beautiful.
months ago, didn't you? And because you said that was the most accessible one. So it's worth. Okay, yeah, it's on the list. Go on then, Neil. You're number 4.
So I had to put my all-time favorite horror in here. It'd be wrong if I didn't. I'm with Commode on this. It's The Exorcist. I just think it's brilliant film. I love the book. I made sure I've read that. And it's such a close adaptation of it. I love the horror of it, the aspect that it's all psychological rather than in your face. I know there is horrific moments, but I wouldn't truly class them as scary moments that you see, the horrific moments. It's the build, it's the dread, the unknown, I think works a treat. I find the bit when he's in Iraq at the beginning and Merrin is scary as what you see in the house in Washington, D.C. When that whole thing, when he discovers the statue of the demon that is there and that vision. I just love it. I
never got
movie.
that. I never, because you said that years ago when we were talking about The Exorcist, and I remember watching it. It took me a long time to watch it for the first time.
Yeah,
and I was waiting for like this really scary thing to happen at the start.
It's the build. It's the
and
build.
myself and my wife looked at each other and went, "Was that it?"
Makes the hairs on the back of my neck go up every time. That bit, yeah, that whole bit. And he's staring at, and you get that awesome image of the two of them with his hat flapping back and silhouette. Oh, it just creeps me for some reason. Wow. Might remind me of my trips to Iraq.
Obviously.
But
are you a fan of that, Helen?
Oh yeah, I mean, again, I admire it probably more than I wholeheartedly love it. But I think it's an astonishing piece of filmmaking, and so many images from it kind of stick with you. Some that you really wish wouldn't.
Yeah.
But just like using cinema as a visual art form, like is really better. And you know, sound and everything as well. It's kind of a complete film in every sense. But it's some of those visuals that really just kind of haunt you.
And God only knows what it would have been like to have watched it in 72, 73, wasn't it?
Oh God, yeah.
So, you know, the fact that it's still quite shocking now. How that must have been in 73 when it was out. I mean, I know your dad.
My dad was a projectionist at our local cinema when it was here, and the St. John's ambulance were outside, as well as religious people telling people not to go in and see the film, and people were being carried out, being sick and stuff like that. I mean, how much of that is true and how much of that is my dad telling me bullshit? I have no idea.
But you see it on the, documentary.
Absolutely.
That you get, you see it around the world that people were literally walking out, passing out, whatever they were doing. I mean, I never quite got the argument of religious people telling you not to go and see it when it's got a huge religious message in it.
Absolutely, yeah. If anything, it's pro-religion. It's saying, hey, if you get possessed, you're gonna need a young priest and an old priest. So
there
you go.
You know, better get friendly with them in advance just to shore up your insurance.
I mean, I nearly put repossessed in because I think that's a great.
yes.
And Linda Blair, let's not forget how great she was as as Reagan there. I think
crazy. Crazy.
It is.
Okay, my number 4. If you look in the dictionary under the phrase, do they do phrases in dictionaries? I don't know. Where it says perfect movie, you'll see a picture of Back to the Future. I think that's one of the, if not the. And again, for a movie where there was so much. Because obviously Michael J. Fox wasn't the original Marty McFly. It was, excuse me,
Eric Stoltz.
That's it. I got God dear, Eric Stoltz. And they even filmed, didn't they? They filmed a lot. Of the
he started shooting.
So a happy accident in that regard that Michael J. Fox. You wouldn't think of anybody else to play Marty McFly now. It's one of those movies. And one thing that always gets me, I speak to people that aren't big movie fans, and the same as people think that Steven Spielberg directed a Star Wars film. People always think that Steven Spielberg directed Back to the Future, and obviously his footprint, his fingerprints are all over Back to the Future, production-wise. It was a Bob Zemeckis movie.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So I just think it's great. I mean, the other two movies in the trilogy are great, but this is another one of those movies that they should never remake.
No, absolutely not.
Please don't ever remake. Maybe do a number 4, but I can't see how you would do that now. But don't ever remake Back to the Future. It is a perfect slice of the time, and it works that it's of that time.
Yeah.
The whole time travel of it makes it that it doesn't feel like it's aged, because it's set in 1985. It's supposed to be 1985, and then it'll go backwards and forwards from that point. So for me, a classic, perfect movie.
Yeah, I've got my son's never seen it. My son's 21 now, and he's still never seen it. So I've said this Christmas we must sit, and I've got the trilogy. We will watch the 3 movies. You're in for a treat. But yeah, it was one that was in and out again. Well, didn't it? You think,
Helen?
I should have put it in.
It is flawless. I love it. I absolutely adore it. I've seen it a lot. I think it's great. It just didn't quite make the 10.
No,
but it's wonderful. No arguments.
That's fair enough then. Your number 3 then, please, Helen.
My number 3 is In the Mood for Love. This is, again, probably one that, this is, I think, now the canon. Actually, this is one of the ones that keeps coming up in best movies I've ever lists. But it is one of the most beautiful movies ever made. Just beautiful, physically beautiful movies ever made. It's Wong Kar-wai directed. It's Tony Leung and Maggie Cheung starring, who are 2 of the most beautiful people, ever to appear on film, and Christopher Doyle cinematography. So these incredibly hyper saturated, almost like acid bright colors, but it's kind of not over the top. It's still got darkness in it. It's basically about these 2 people who find out that their partners are having an affair with each other, and then they sort of are trying to deal with this kind of together and help each other through this, and are sort of falling in love, but are more honorable than their partners. So don't feel like they can just throw themselves into an affair, So it's kind of a brief encounter, kind of an energy, which is another great film. But yeah, just achingly romantic, and like I say, incredible looking, incredible score as well. Just beautiful. I think it was a Tam Dunn score. But yeah, flawless, absolutely flawless film, and I couldn't get past it. A Michael Galasso score, I should be clear. Michael Galasso composed the score.
Okay, I must admit, when I was going through Google and looking at movies that I might have missed, I saw this in nearly every list. And I've never seen it. I must admit, I've never seen it. But
I saw it back. So it came out about 2000.
About 2000, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I went to. I was working for a video chain as part of the buying team, and went to a screening of this in Peterborough. Believe it or not. The
glamour, the glitz. It's the perfect place to see it, isn't it?
But yeah, it's stunning and beautiful. The colours in it, and I'm colourblind, and even I could tell the colours in it was sumptuous and beautiful. So it is a lovely film.
Wow. Yeah. Have they still got the big wooden white letters of Peterborough in the hills?
Yeah, they have.
Wow. Okay. I haven't been to Peterborough. I must go and see that.
Yeah.
Can I tell you my favourite sign anywhere in England?
Go on then.
When you go into Cambridge on the train platform, it says Home of East Anglia University. In the Cambridge train platform.
Oh right.
Yeah.
Just, I mean, flawless.
I hope you took a picture of that. And
I did. I know. In first, I don't know if it's still there. I haven't been in a little while on the train, but yeah, I couldn't laugh. I couldn't stop laughing for a minute. I thought that was magnificent.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, then Neil, your number 3, please.
So we've already mentioned this. I'm like Helen. I don't care if it's a Christmas movie or not. Die Hard. Love a bit of action. Love a bit of Bruce Willis in this. Love a bit of Alan Rickman in this as the perfect villain. It's just like we said. It doesn't falter from start to beginning. Doesn't wane. It keeps you on that ride all the way to the very end, and It's superb. I mean, I would suppose most people listening to this have probably seen the movie, and I hope they feel the same way as I do. But yeah, it's great.
Honestly can't believe it's not in my top 10. I honestly can't believe.
Go home. Oh, you are home.
Yeah, yeah. That's one of the biggest
way
regrets.
we've talked about this
I know. It's one of the biggest
shocks
regrets
me.
in my life that this isn't in my top 10 of greatest movies of all time.
But yeah, it's just it's a pure ride, a pure entertainment. I think it's joyous, and in every form it's joyous. And I still got fond memories of the ITV showing it at like 6 o'clock in the evening and turning it to Maggot Farmer and everything like Yippee-ki-yay, Maggot Farmer. I still loved it. Do you know what I mean? It's great, isn't it? It's just a great movie.
It's phenomenal. Imagine being Alan Rickman and that being your first movie.
I know.
Imagine.
It's
what the
crazy.
heck?
Yeah, absolutely crazy. But he's one of those guys. I mean, you look at him in that, and then look at him in, say, Harry Potter, and it looks like two completely different people. It's just the way that and then what was the... Oh, God, what was the...
Well, he does it in the movie, doesn't he? The one minute he's perfectly German, and then he's down with...
He's Bill Clay.
Bill Clay, yeah.
Bill Clay.
Bill Clay, yeah. What was the movie that he did, I think, after that? The British movie where...
Truly, Madly, Deeply.
Truly, Madly, Deeply,
with Judith Stevenson, wasn't it?
Yeah,
that was a beautiful movie.
Beautiful film.
That's a great film, yeah. Okay, my number 3, predictably, is Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back.
Oh, that's my number 2.
Is that your number 2?
Hey. It genuinely is my number 2.
Okay.
I pretty much said my number 1 and number 2 would stay the same, and that's my number 2.
Yeah, I kind of sort of fought against putting Star Wars in there because it seems just predictable for me to put Star Wars in there because, like, everything that surrounds me, Star Wars is in my DNA, and it's like it has to be in there. And sometimes also you take it for granted because it's the good Star Wars. And it's sort of, so you feel like, is that too predictable to put it in your top 10 greatest movies?
I think it's the best Star Wars movie still to this day.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Well, maybe. Maybe.
Nah, come on.
Maybe.
Yeah. Well, it's still Rise of Skywalker with you, Paraff. I'm disappointed. I don't know. I just love seeing that Emperor come back, It was
somehow.
Let's not open that can of worms.
No.
I haven't got enough gigabytes of storage on my computer to go into that.
We'll leave that alone.
We'll leave
but it was
that
so
alone.
good because George Lucas didn't direct it. I'm sorry, George, but it's that good. It's it needed, and it's brilliant, isn't it?
It did.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal inventor of story and character, and a less phenomenal writer of dialogue. So, and I feel like he wouldn't disagree too hard with that.
No.
So I think it benefits from having fresh eyes on it. But but yeah, no, it's the best. I mean, it could absolutely have been on my list. It isn't, but it could have been. And yes, I think it is still the best Star Wars thing. Although I was just watching Lego Star Wars Holiday Special just before this, and that's fantastic. And Andor, of course, recently I think is the thing that's come closest in quality. No spoilers. But I think
the one thing I found about Andor was, and what was refreshing, as much as I love fan service, there was hardly any fan service.
No, wasn't interested. Didn't want to do it.
And it was just telling you a good story with good plot and good dialogue and great characters, and that was refreshing.
If you have a fan service character that you really want to be in your story, like Mon Mothma in that show, then great, find something for her to do and do that with her, and fantastic. But don't just have somebody showing up because you like the costume, No. So anyway, this is not an Andor thing, but wow, Andor is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I shall be enjoying that soon.
Indeed. Helen, your number 2 then, please.
My number 2, I sort of alluded vaguely to it earlier, but it's Raiders of the Lost Ark.
That's my number 2.
Hey! It's a flawless film. Again, it just there is not a wasted scene, there is not a wasted line, there is nothing that doesn't work about it, except that Indy keeps failing, but that's what he's meant to do, and it's so much more interesting than the guy who always triumphs. It's Harrison Ford at his best. It's Spielberg just being the greatest director of the moment. The script is perfect. It's brilliantly shot. And all the effects stuff, all the drama and the scale of it, Oh yeah, love it.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And I still find it amazing. It was. Oh, go on.
I was going to say, every shot looks like a Spielberg shot. That's the thing about it.
Yeah.
It's like the lighting. It just looks what Spielberg was and is. You know, it's faultless, absolutely faultless. Go on, Neil.
Faultless.
It is. I was just going to say, I watch this film a lot because I just think, like Helen said, it's a perfect movie. It's the fact that it was a PG when it was released, or an A, I should say.
Yeah.
Back in the day when we went to see it, and
which is crazy.
It would never get away with that now, would it?
Of course, it wouldn't. Melting faces and heads.
But yeah, it's a fantastic movie, isn't it? Fantastic movie.
Indeed.
It's like Indy in that movie is what everybody thinks they could be, like a hero wise. He's a human hero. You know, he's not he's not flawless.
You punch him in the face and you split his lip. That's the thing.
He bleeds.
And that's the beauty of him is he gets hurt. And it's not the years, it's the mileage, but you can see the scars. Literally everywhere, from his bottom lip to all over his body.
I feel like so much of Spielberg's work is sort of in my DNA, and it really could have been Jaws. It could have been this. It definitely could have been E.T. and very nearly was. Could have been Close Encounters. It could have been,
1941.
Schindler, Jurassic Park. Well, it probably wasn't going to be 1941. It wasn't going to be Always. It wasn't going to be Ready Player One. Could have been Lincoln. It's probably the most recent one.
Okay.
But yeah, I think Raiders is hard to ignore.
Completely agree. Okay, Neil, your number 2 was Empire Strikes Back.
It was.
My number 2 is Raiders of the Lost Ark. So before we reveal our number 1 greatest movie of all time, Helen, if you'd like to give us a countdown from number 10 to number 2, then Neil will do the same, and then I'll do the same.
All right. So my number 10 was His Girl Friday. Coming in at number 9, Hunt for the Wilder People. Number 8, Buster Keaton's The General. Number 7, Cyrano de Bergerac, the Rapinoe version. Number 6, A Matter of Life and Death. Number 5, Singing in the Rain. Number 4, Spirited Away. Number 3, In the Mood for Love. And number 2, Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Wonderful. Neil, your 10 to 2, please.
So number 10 is Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring. Number 9, Goodfellas. Number 8, An American Werewolf in London. Number 7, Reservoir Dogs. Number 6, It's a Wonderful Life. Number 5, Jaws. Number 4, The Exorcist. Number 3, Die Hard. And 2, Empire Strikes Back.
Wonderful. And mine is number 10, Everything Everywhere All at Once. Number 9, Glengarry Glen Ross. 8, Some Like It Hot. 7, Blade Runner. 6, Jaws. 5, Field of Dreams. 4, Back to the Future. 3, Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. And number 2, Raiders of the Lost Ark. So, Helen, today, what is your number 1 greatest movie of all time?
Well, okay, so I'm going to set this up a little tiny bit. I think I wrote in my Empire, I was asked to write an Empire bio at one point, a very short one, and I said most people think I love superhero movies more than anything else, but what I actually love is incredibly smart movies about people falling verbally in love, like smart people talking a lot and falling in love. And you can probably tell that already from the top 10, actually, if you think back. But that's why I've gone for The Apartment. Billy Wilder, an IAL Diamond written script, Billy Wilder directed, Jack Lemmon doing every single moment of that movie better than any human has ever done anything. Like there is a scene where he strains past her using a tennis racket that is just a miraculous piece of character work. It is unbelievable that a human being can be that good at acting. And yeah, every single thing he does in every frame of that movie is magnificent. But it's also Billy Wilder at his best. It's Shirley MacLaine has never been better, and she has been very good in other places. It's an incredible supporting cast. It is this hard-baked cynicism running right through it that, again, like we were talking about with It's a Wonderful Life, just cuts through the romance and makes it feel more real and makes it feel more precious and more rare and more important. It's incredible. The Apartment. Yeah.
Great choice.
I think if we ever do top 10 actors, I think Jack Lemmon would be somewhere up.
He absolutely should be. Yeah. I think people have a little bit forgotten about him but you're kind of resting now on Glengarry Glen Ross for very late career, Lemon, The Apartment, and Some Like It Hot. Those three alone would be enough, I think.
Yeah.
But he there's actually so His Girl Friday is based on a play called The Front Page. He actually did an adaptation of The Front Page in the 70s. He's incredible in that as well. He was great in Grumpy Old Men. Like The Odd Couple, for God's sake.
The Odd Couple, yeah.
Just one of the old timers.
Yeah, he was a great actor, wasn't he?
That's a great one. That is a great one. I've written down what I think Neil's number one is, so I'm going to see whether it is. Neil, what's your number one?
It's Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't need to say too much more, but it's that proper, chapter play serial that we used to get put in a big screen version. It's just fantastic, isn't it? It really is. Timeless, I think the word is. And there it is.
Yeah.
Don't need to say too much more.
Wonderful. My number one, I'm sure you can write. You know what it is, Neil, don't you?
Yes, Freddy Got Fingered.
It was, and I can't believe that more people don't like that movie. It's episode 4, Star Wars episode 4, A New Hope.
Yeah.
I kind of sort of gave it away with my number 3, really. It's like I've just said, Star Wars is in my DNA, and as much, and I don't want to talk about episode 9 too much, as episode 9 coming out of that movie made me question my feelings that actually Star Wars is just a movie, where I'd never felt that before in my life after Rise of Skywalker. After The Mandalorian, not so much Boba Fett, but definitely Andor has made me fall in love back with Star Wars again, which isn't a bad thing, because I've been in love with it since I was 8 years old. So, it's kind of nice to fall back in love with an old love that you sort of thought was kind of being nasty to you for a while. It is nice to sort of fall back in again. I'm not 100% back in love, but I'm kind of sort of giving it a second chance,
It's a new hope for love, if you will.
Oh, beautifully done, Helen. See, that is why you do what you do, and you do it so well. Right, before we have a little bit more of a chat, I just want to we have a couple of honourable mentions. I do notice that we didn't get loads of honourable mentions because I think it was just too hard a question.
Far too hard.
But Stu Grant said The Blues Brothers, The Big Lebowski, Planet of the Apes, 1968, The Crow, Evil Dead 2, Halloween, Fight Club, and The Good, the Bad and the Weird. At And Why Not Pod said, I think we all know that the answer here is Footloose, which is his answer, I believe.
Oh, which version?
Is that Peter Quill?
It could well be.
Yeah.
But if we're going to insist there are others, how about In the Mood for Love, A Matter of Life and Death, Local Hero, His Girl Friday, Field of Dreams, Heat, Out of Sight, Aliens, and Paddington 2.
Oh, Paddington 2. What are we doing with our lives?
There you go.
Oh, my goodness.
I know.
At SP_filmmaker said Jurassic Park, The Shining, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and The Dark Knight. And at Andy McEwen 1 said Robocop, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Goodfellas, and Back to the Future. So thank you very much, everybody that was brave enough to put their favorite.
I mean, at least we covered some of those, but a lot that we absolutely could have added. But Paddington 2, magnificent film.
Absolutely. Before we do say our goodbyes, Helen, I did want to ask, in the latest copy of Empire magazine, it's all very Indiana Jones heavy. You had some very exclusive Indiana Jones stuff. So first of all, when you get an exclusive like that, obviously, whether it's yourself or whoever it is that goes off and does the reporting.
Funny enough, that was the editor himself. That was
that's very strange. Very strange. I wonder how that worked out. They obviously must know about it way ahead of time. So how hard is it to keep that kind of information quiet when I'm sure all you want to do is go and say, look, we've just been to film Indiana Jones. You must want to just tell everybody. And you can't, generally speaking, because you've signed very scary embargoes and you're not allowed to talk about things. They'll usually allow you to tell like a spouse or a partner or your immediate family, but
But yeah, it is. I mean, this kind of stuff. I know, people think, oh, you just go and do an interview and you put in a picture and boom, you've got a magazine. But there are literally negotiations that happen years sometimes in advance with the studios, trying to get this access, trying to get exclusive images, trying to get good enough images for a cover and something that is exciting and interesting and that readers will cherish and want to own. So it is an incredible amount of work. I mean, Terry White, Nick DeSemblin, all the Empire editors that I've been lucky enough to work for over the years, they sweat blood over the magazine. They really, really do, every single month. So yes, when Nick says, I would like to take this one, please, nobody really argues, because he earns it every single month. You've got no idea. Yeah. So but yeah, he got to interview Harrison Ford about Indiana Jones, and this is why this job is so fabulous, and so I'm so lucky to have it, because we do sometimes get to do these things. We do get to go on set of some of these films. We do get to talk to these people, and it never ceases to be a thrill and a pleasure and a privilege. It's wonderful. Yeah.
Especially when something like Indiana Jones, because there seems to be we don't even know the name of the movie yet.
No, we still don't know.
So and I know you haven't, but I take it that even you don't know.
I do not know. No, I don't know what Nick has been told, because he would obviously not blab.
Say anything.
But I do not, because I was not privy to any of that, certainly. So but yes, it may be that others do. I don't want to speak for them, but yeah, but sometimes we do. We do know things. Chris sat on some very big Avengers tidbits that he sort of gleaned, but wasn't. You can't really just go out and announce it. I mean, apart from anything else, if we spoiled a film, our readers would kill us. Never mind the publicists.
Exactly.
And we don't want to be that guy. That's not what we do. But I remember, this is a very old example, so I can tell you. But I went on X-Men Origins Wolverine. I didn't know how it was going to turn out. I was just excited because it had Wolverine in it, and they kept talking about there's no X-Men in this movie. There's no X-Men in this movie. And then they walk us past a trailer that says Scott Summers on the door.
Oh, right.
So, you're like, well, guys, I think there's an X-Men in your movie. I don't want to be difficult, but so, things like that, you sometimes just pick up, or somebody will let something slip on set. And then you kind of have to find out, is this a spoiler? Because I don't want to spoil things, but equally journalistically, I don't want to ignore it if it's a legit non-spoiler. If he's in the first scene and it's not going to be a problem and he's going to appear in the first trailer, I want to be able to talk about that, So it's a balancing act with that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Because the movie studios must be putting a lot of faith and trust in letting people like yourself, because especially with things like mobile phones these days as well, that people can just get a quick.
You can't take pictures on a set. You cannot take pictures on a set. And generally speaking, if we see a film very early, we'll be signing an embargo, going, we're not going to write about this until X date.
Yeah.
Just to control that kind of thing. So yeah, there is a certain amount of that kind of negotiation that has to go on, but mostly it's really about just trying to convince them that yes, we can be trusted with this information, and we won't. And again, like I say, this is not like us failing to be journalists and ferret out the truth. We're trying to ferret out what is interesting and important and good to know, and not what is going to spoil a movie down the line. So it's trying to find that balance. It's sometimes I've literally said sometimes on set visits, please tell me enough so I can know what a spoiler is, because I don't want to do it by accident.
Yeah.
So it's walking that line tends to be the issue. But like I say, what a privilege to be in this position.
I have one quick question, Helen, before we go. As it's Christmas week, this recording is going out. Next, obviously, 2023 is on our doorstep. What is the movies we should be looking forward to in 2023?
Good question, Neil. And so, just like that, we unfortunately lost the internet signal. And lots has happened since we finished recording that to how I'm standing or sitting here now. So, thank you very much to Helen O'Hara. Apologies that the internet went out like how it did. We were very, very close to finishing anyway. Neil had that burning question, which unfortunately, I'm sure we'll get to ask Helen that sort of sometime in 2023. And it's weird because since then, on that actual day that we recorded that episode, when I spoke to Helen about Indiana Jones, that was the day that the Indiana Jones trailer dropped. And the trailer dropped and the title dropped, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Not sure about that. So that was strange. And then also, as I'm recording this, a couple of days ago, Neil broke his knee in 2 places taking the dog for a walk. So a lot has changed in that time. But we hope you have a lovely Christmas. I've been into Disneyland Paris and back with mixed results. I'm sure we'll talk about that sometime on a future podcast. But we're all fighting colds and stuff like that. So I just thought I'd come on, say thank you to Helen, and also to give the usual gubbins. Come and support us, please, on all the social medias. Top 10 pods, email us toptenpods@hotmail.com, and also come and support the podcast. Just go to patreon.com/top10pods. Loads of different rewards. You can get to be a guest on your own episode if you fancy. And we're also on YouTube, as you see, and come and support the podcast and leave us a rating and review. All of that gubbins. Safe to say, have a lovely Christmas, have a lovely holiday. Neil, get better soon. Thank you very much to Helen. And I think that's all we need to say. We just need to go and have a holiday. So thanks very much. Let's start the countdown.